Cow Plunge,
Fourth Grade Challenge,
Diabetes Expo.
As a key sponsor of Mustangs baseball and Chiefs training camp, Heartland is the #1 fan for a healthy St. Joseph.
Josh Looney, Mitch Holthus with you for the final time in 2012 from St. Joseph, Missouri. Chiefs Training Camp Live presented by Heartland Health. Mitch, it's the end of the road. A good camp, a solid camp. We talked about it yesterday, this team pushing forward. Now what's left to do is get another win in St. Louis. Then it comes home, and really they're kind of past the halfway mark. You have another week and a half of camp left, and then it comes down to getting down to that 53-man roster.
Yeah, let's take these past 3 weeks, though, here in St. Joe. I did a Finding the 53 about it. I thought Missouri Western did a fabulous job this year. This has been the best camp they've had of the 3 years, not even close. But I thought the chemistry this year in this camp, from the team, from the fans, from the coaches, 7,700 here at Family Fun Day, it was remarkable. I think this was a very, very, very good 3 weeks in St. Joe. And like I said on Finding the 53, if this season turns out like you and I think it can, this was the point of origin. St. Joe set this team up to have a good season.
Yeah, it was definitely a good year. And let's talk about who had a good camp here in our final show, Mitch. You and I have taken in every single practice, every single walkthrough. Haven't missed a snap, and so we've seen a lot of football there over 3 weeks. So who are some of the guys that stood out to us? And let me phrase this as, let's take out John Baldwin. Everybody knows
We've
that
talked about him a lot.
We've talked about him, but everybody's talked about John Baldwin. Let's take away Matt Castle. Everyone knows is having a good camp. Jamal Charles, Eric Berry. Let's get down to guys that are maybe on the roster bubble or maybe have flown under the radar that people haven't heard about every day. Even Steve Maneri is a guy that's starting to get love, and everyone saw that. So I kind of want to focus on some of
touchdown yesterday.
Yeah, touchdown yesterday. He's catching touchdown passes, the former offensive lineman. So I kind of want to go with some of the guys who've flown under the radar with good camps. I'll start with one, and this is probably the highest profile of the group, and I would say Sean Drone. It really sticks out to me as having a great camp. He flashed in OTAs. He's flashed out here at camp, and now all of a sudden, guys weren't talking about this guy when they were talking about Chiefs running backs. It was Peyton Hillis, Jamal Charles, Cyrus Gray, and then whatever. Now everyone's wondering, can the Chiefs keep 4 running backs? Because this guy, so far, through 3 weeks, has played himself to where he deserves to make this team.
No question. I thought coming into St. Joe he would be practice squadish kind of guy. I knew he had a good spring, but he's taken it up a notch here in camp. He's been consistent. What you see here, he's done every day for 3 weeks for the most part. He was really good in that game against Arizona, which I think set him another notch higher. But I look for this team to keep 4 running backs, to keep Cyrus Gray and Sean Drone, and, of course, Hillis and Jamal Charles. But Drone can help this team. He's going to help him in special teams. I think he could help him as a third down back, specialty back. He's got some giddy-up go now. He hit another gear against Arizona that I didn't quite know he had. So he showed game speed against the Cardinals that will really bode well, I think, for him when the Chiefs call upon him.
Sean Drone had a fumble early in camp, and maybe that would be a cause for concern. His ability to handle the football hasn't done it much, but since the early fumble, I believe it was the first day, we haven't seen him put the ball on the ground, and he did not do it on Friday night. So that's something to look for in the games, the remaining preseason games with Sean Drone. Can he hold the football? Because I think we're going to see the kid get a lot of workload. He's going to be running on a lot of special teams because the Chiefs want to find out, yeah, he's flashed, but can he do it consistently, and is he worthy of a 53-man roster spot?
Well, you got to keep passing these tests, and he has passed the camp consistency test. Now can you take 2 preseason games and play as well as you did the first time in the second week? And with Cyrus Gray out with his hamstring issue, all of a sudden Sean Drone becomes kind of the key guy in the St. Louis preseason game.
He might get 20 carries.
He might get 20 carries. I fully anticipate him to get 20 carries in this game. But he's the kind of guy that'll take those 20 carries and can do a lot with it. He becomes one of the focal points.
I caught up with Shaun Draughn after one of the practices this week just to talk about his camp as a whole and what he hopes to get done over the remaining weeks when we return to Kansas City. How about you and your game on Friday and just what you've been able to do in the offense? How has your approach been this camp, and what do you want to keep doing?
My approach has been just to do what I've been doing, just get better every day and take it a day at a time and try to make the team.
Take me through your career path. I mean, you're a guy who was released about a year ago from Washington. You come on the Chiefs practice squad. You get elevated to the active roster, but you don't get any carries, and now all of a sudden you're running with ones in some part of this offense.
Yeah, man, it's a blessing, man. I'm just thankful. I'm thankful for the organization. They came in and just gave me a chance, and like you said, I came up the rough side of the mountain. I got cut last year, and then I came in, and practice squad probably was a big blessing in disguise, actually. I feel like I got so much better at just practicing against our defense and just learning from the other guys, Jamal when he came in, and Thomas Jones when he was here. He was a big mentor for me last year. He was just, a big encouragement, just telling me to keep on pushing. I mean, I know I didn't get drafted or anything, but, I'm here. I'm happy where I am.
How do you think a guy like you can complement when you've got two backs like Peyton and Jamal?
Just keep them fresh. I mean, I think I hope, I don't know what the plan is, but I mean, just keep them fresh and do what I've been doing. I get into practice, get my few plays, and hopefully in the game it'll be the same. I get my few plays and make the best of them.
Do you feel like you've had a standout camp? Because from outside, it seems that you're one of the guys that's popped up and surprised, and really you could say the same thing about OTAs from us that have watched you at least.
I just feel like I'm doing what I've been coached to do. Feel like when I get my chance, I try to shine as best as I can.
And then also, special teams is probably going to be a factor for you making this football team. You're covering kickoffs. You're doing the kickoff return type stuff. How has that gone for you?
It's going good. Mac is a great coach, man. He's hard nosed. Of course, I know this is how I'm going to make the team. I probably go harder in special teams, which I don't notice. I probably go harder in special teams more so than I do on offense. So I know that's how I'm going to make the team. That's going to be a big role that I have to play. So,
How'd it feel to hear the crowd roar when you got in the end zone on Friday?
Man, it's crazy. Like everybody, when I scored, even when I was in college, I never hear the crowd. Like it's always, and actually this time, because you never know when you're gonna score, So I didn't hear it, but afterwards, when I was celebrating my teammates, it was good, man. Everybody's pumped up, and it was just a great feeling.
So that's like one of the first times you've heard the crowd when you scored a touchdown?
I'm pretty sure I heard it before, but you kind of zone out when you score. So, but that time I kind of tried to soak it all in. I took as long as I could to get to the sideline, just celebrate with my teammates. That's what it was.
Okay. Shaun Draughn, a good camp thus far, and a guy to watch as we move forward. Mitch, I'm interested in maybe a guy on your list that has really stuck out to you here at training camp.
I got to give you props. You called this one at the beginning of camp. I did not, but Anthony Toribio is a guy that has gone from, will he make it? Carson Newman, Division II guy, to being the starting nose tackle, who also, like Draughn,
it's the D2, that's why.
I guess so. Like Draughn, played at a higher level in the preseason game against the number ones of Arizona than he even did in practice, and he didn't practice badly. Now, the same question for Toribio is, can he do it in the St. Louis game against Scott Wells? He'll probably be matched up against him, who's the free agent pickup by the Rams, who's been the great center for the Packers for 8 years. So here we go again. But Toribio has gone from being, these two guys have pricked the bubble. They've blown the bubble and popped it. And it's not on their face, it's in the trash can because they're going to be on the team. And they both have fought their way on it. And it's good to see it.
Let's take that a step further, Mitch. Toribio's done well. Let's put him on the roster. Dontari Poe, let's put him on the roster behind Anthony Toribio. There's two. Tyson Jackson, Glenn Dorsey. There's 3 and 4. Alan Bailey is 5. There's 5 defensive linemen right there. You probably have room to carry, 6 maybe? 6 possible defensive linemen. So you're looking at bubble players. Ropati Patuaituya, good game, very good game.
He was coming up next. He was another one I've got.
A good opener. He's going to have to keep showing. You have Jarrell Poe, who do the Chiefs want to shut the door on him? A 6th-round pick just a year ago, had a sack in the preseason opener. Where does he fit in? And then this guy right here, 99 Amon Gordon, one of the better stories of last season. Kind of unheralded, did it all for the Chiefs. Played some nose tackle, played some defensive end, probably one of the most versatile linemen on the board. You've got a numbers crunch, Mitch, especially with Toribio in the camp he's had. And be honest, going into camp, a lot of people probably didn't have Toribio on this roster. No. If he's going to steal a roster space, then it's going to affect whoever that 6th defensive lineman is, and if they keep 7, then it's going to affect the linebacker. I mean, you see the domino effect that goes on here. I think it's an interesting situation that puts the Chiefs in as they try and figure out this defensive line.
Just me, but I don't think you can put a 7th defensive lineman on this team. You're too deep with 6, and that battle for that one slot is all those guys that you mentioned. Ropati, to me, has been a surprise of this camp. He looked good on tape when I watched it in the Arizona game. Actually, Gerald Poe did better in the game than he's done in practice. Amon Gordon is in there fighting away too, but I think all those guys are fighting for one slot. So it goes down to versatility, who can play the 3 and the 5, maybe the nose. That would be in Gordon's favor, but quite honestly, I think he's been outplayed by these other guys. And so I think that also is going to go for the next 2 weeks in the preseason, but I don't see any more than one slot, because that slot you need for linebackers, defensive backs, and special teams.
You have guys that play special teams. It's an interesting situation to be in, and Anthony Toribio has kind of muddied the waters there in that defensive line. I'm going to go with a guy who caught my eye last week at our halfway point, Nate Eatrice out of Colgate, and this is an interesting guy. He had never played fullback before in his life until the Chiefs didn't have a fullback in camp, and they moved him from running back to fullback. Probably the best move Nate Eatrice could make, because let's face it, with the camp that Cyrus Gray has had, Sean Drone, Peyton Hillis, Jamal Charles, there's not a lot of room for another running back with those guys. So he goes and takes one for the team, starts playing some fullback, and by golly, he's not half bad at the job. In fact, now Shane Bannon's back, and Nate Eatrice is still working in there. He played with the ones in the game the other night. He's kind of all over the place. He brings some fire to the game. He can catch the football, as you see there. This is an interesting player when we talk about the fullback, Mitch. If they're going to keep a traditional fullback, and he's a little smaller than the traditional fullback, but if you keep a guy in that role, I think now, after a week and a half of the job, Nate Eatrice finds himself right in the middle of a roster race to make this 53-man roster.
I agree. Didn't Rudy wear 45?
He did. Rudy wore 45.
I know you're watching that going, Rudy, but he's better than Rudy. Okay, he's going to be on more than kickoff coverage. But this is another guy, Josh, that came on the outside rail. I didn't see this coming at all. In fact, we called him Ekus or something for like 2 weeks. I did, and got thanks to his brother for getting it right. But quite honestly, he does not look like the prototypical fullback. But this team, the way it is structured, if they keep one fullback, doesn't need necessarily a prototypical fullback. They need a guy that can get leverage in a lead blocking situation. He's not going to be out there like Ovi Mihaly or somebody in the National Football League and out there for 30 snaps. So he could play teams because he's athletic enough to do that. But what I have noticed when they run ISOs and leads, the times that they do it, he's able to get leverage on blocks like that. He's able to get his pad under the defensive players' pads. And so, yeah, he's got some spit and vinegar to him, too.
Yeah, it's an interesting battle as they go forward, and we'll see on Saturday night now that Bannon's in, if Bannon's the first fullback to go in, or if Nate Eatrice continues to stay in that one role, and then this Patrick DeMarco is working in as well. So we'll see what goes on there. Mitch, who's another guy for you that has stood out?
Well, I'm going to throw Devin Wiley out there. Now, we are all kind of anticipating him, but there is such a spark from him on returns, and I'm talking just punt returns right now, not necessarily at receiver. But throughout this camp, when he is repped at punt returns, it's a different frame, man. It's like quick shutter on your camera or your camera phone. It's just like whew, he goes to warp speed. And to me, it just jumps off the page. I think he can really, really help this team right away in the punt return game. See, even here, I mean, he takes the face mask. We talked about that a couple days ago. But he has the patience. He's still got the speed, but when he hits the gear, he goes. And he looks like he could help this team at least get field position. This team was okay last year in punt returns. They're top 6 in the league, but the longest return was 37 yards. Everybody else in the league that was in the top 7 or 8 all had a 80-yarder or 65-yarder. Wiley can give you that play.
Yeah, he can give you the home run hit. In fact, the Chiefs, no return score of any capacity since you see the feed as we intro our show. There's a little thing of Dexter McCluster, 2010 regular season opener against the San Diego Chargers. That's the last time the Chiefs had a return score, kickoff, punt, you name it. That's it. It's time to get another home run hit because it can change the game. It changed that game, and it really changed that season, I think, from the way that year started. So special teams are
take
very
your point up. Look at the way the 2 seasons started. That punt return electrified that crowd, and that set the tone for the season. Dex fumbles the opening kickoff of last year against Buffalo.
And they fumble 3 games out of the game.
And that set the tone for that game and that season. So, hey, it could be a punt return against Atlanta that sparks this thing and gets it rolling.
I'm going to pick a guy here. I don't know if he makes the roster or not, Mitch. I think he's put himself in a position to be in the mix. When people talk about 5th, 6th receiver, how many the 7th receiver, how many the receivers the Chiefs keep? A lot of people talk about.
I say 6, but I count Dexter McCluster as a receiver.
Okay, so that's why I said 5. So let's count Dexter McCluster as 1, and then we'll get down. So that last receiver has got to play in special teams. A lot of people say, okay, Terrence Copper, that might be your guy. Jeremy Horn gets mentioned from time to time. Junior Hemingway is a 7th round pick. Does he end up getting that spot? There's a guy that no one's talked about, and he keeps making play after play. My concern with him is, can you do what Copper can do on special teams? I don't know. But when it comes to playmaking, Jamar Newsome has had a very good camp. He had a electrifying toe touch catch from Ricky Stanzi in yesterday's practice. He's making plays like this, the one-handers, that he's finding his way to get open. He's got a great body. He can run. He's thicker. He's kind of built more like Baldwin and Bo. A big guy. He's shown good hands. He was on the practice squad last season. Hasn't really got an opportunity yet in NFL action, and maybe it's going to take a game or two for him to really blow up, for him to make the roster. I don't know, but I think that he's definitely in this mix at receiver for that final spot.
Yeah, he's very interesting in the conversation, but to be the guy at the spot where you want to put him in there, he has got to be the 4-core special teams guy that Terrence Copper is. And if you watch Terrence now, he's still such a leader on the special teams. You know, protector here and gunner here. He can do 1,000 things. To me, in the case of Newsome, and I do like him very, very much, is I think the next 2 preseason games are big for him. I think he needs to shine in the second halves, the last 3 quarters against St. Louis and Seattle. Try to do it consistently. He was targeted the other night, had some catches against Arizona, but there wasn't the big flashy play. Right. And so I think that if he shows that in those 2 preseason games, then this really gets interesting.
You need a Jeremy Horn flash.
Yeah.
What Jeremy Horn did in 2010 to make this roster, he was getting open every game. He had a great camp. He probably had an equivalent camp to what Newsome's had here.
Yeah.
Horn had a good camp, but then he did it in the games, and he was getting behind defenders. And even when the quarterbacks can't give him the ball, you're like, oh, man, what a terrible pass, because this kid was open. He keeps getting open. You're looking for a Newsome flash circa 2010 Jeremy Horn. That's what put Horn on the active roster.
Absolutely. But I need to see it for 2 preseason games.
Okay,
And do it consistently.
We'll see if Newsome.
Stanzi and Quinn want that too, because they're kind of involved, in a kind of a race here too. They need Newsome to be really good in the last 3 quarters.
Yeah, and Newsome's been Stanzi's favorite target this week, so maybe that game comes in St. Louis if it continues from what we see on the practice field. The Rams better cover Jamar Newsome, because Ricky Stanzi's been looking his way a lot this week in practices. Anybody else on your list, Mitch? Big lineman that maybe you've seen on either side of the football?
Well, Lucas Patterson comes to mind, the fact that he played defense a year ago. Now, we saw this coming in the spring because he had such a great offseason. But to go from defense, he'd made the transition last year, kind of morphed into it. But he just looks like a guy that can be a very valuable backup offensive lineman. And again, he's been consistent. He shows leverage. He's looked like he's played offensive line his whole life, and really he's pretty new at this. So I just think he's worth a really long look when you're putting together your 53 and maybe an 8th offensive lineman. I do think this team might keep 8 offensive linemen and have 7 active on the first Sundays of the season. I think that's kind of why they put Lilja in there at center a little bit. Not to disparage the guys like David Mims, who you mentioned either today or yesterday, I don't remember, but or Darrell Harris or some of the younger offensive linemen. But you can go with 8, 7 active. A lot of teams are doing it now in the NFL because you need that slot for a special teams type player.
You mentioned Darrell Harris. You realize this is his 4th training camp with the Chiefs. He's yet to play in a regular season game. His 4th training camp with this team. So it's a guy who's been around. Lucas Patterson's also a player, Mitch, where still has practice squad eligibility, and I think it comes down to him. Did the Chiefs risk losing him on going to the practice squad? How do they feel about that? He's obviously a valuable player on the practice squad because he can continue to learn in the system. He can be first guy up if there's an injury. You've got a lot of young, unproven players backing up the starters. So, with a lot of these guys, Scott Pioli's there Okay, which scout was at our game on last Friday night? Which scout has come to 2 games? Okay, the Bills have been to 2 of our games. We played them in the opener. Maybe that's why, or maybe because I look at their roster, oh, they need a guard. Those are the types of things that goes into behind the scenes for a general manager in the scouting department. And it's little things like that of, okay, we know the Raiders were at our game. And it's not just to scout us for the season. They're looking at players and what do they need, and can we try and sneak this guy through, or are we going to lose him? I mean, look no further than the nightmarish loss for the Chiefs back in 04, 05, whenever it was, when they tried to do it with Ryan Lilja, and he goes to the Colts. The Chiefs did not read that situation correctly. The Colts needed a guy that said, thank you, and Lilja's got a ring for it.
They tried to hide him, and he became a starter immediately with the Peyton Manning. So, yeah, I mean, that's the game that goes on now in the National Football League, and the Chiefs are playing that game too. But when you mention the Raiders, you look at this week's opponent, the Rams, they're starting over. Reggie McKenzie's starting over with Oakland. He's trying to put his own stamp on it. They're going down to base 0 and building up from there. And the same thing with Jeff Fisher and the Rams. If you study, I've been studying their roster, hey, they're blowing it up, which means they're going to look at everybody else. They're basically where the Chiefs were in 09, quite honestly. You scour everybody else and try to find the Tribios or the Studebakers or those kind of guys. And so, yes, they're going to watch this roster very closely, and you've got to play kind of a counter game because you don't want to lose those guys necessarily.
Yeah, just think of some of the guys the Chiefs have pulled off other rosters, whether it's at camp or elsewhere. You mentioned Studebaker. He was a practice squad taken from Philadelphia.
Maneri. Did we
Steve Maneri was a waiver guy. Toribio was off waivers from the Packers right after camp's final cuts. You can even go back to, I don't know, Wallace Gilberry with the Giants and what he was able to do and be a successful third-down pass rush guy here. The Chiefs, and those were a lot of those acquisitions were when the Chiefs were in that build mode that you talked about. So you do have to take that into account when making these final roster decisions.
Maneri's another guy in this camp, though, to me, that has shot up the list because he shows some of the same skills that Boss and Moeaki show.
Surprisingly.
With those 3 guys, you can show 3 tight ends. Somebody's got to answer to go big, and he's going down the field just like this. That's a wide receiver route. That's a deep out. Boss can run it. He can run it. Moeaki can really run it. But now all of a sudden, there's a double move.
That's an offensive tackle last year. They just did
That's a double move. Yeah.
I
don't see BA. I don't see Brandon Albert out there working. I see my 7 shake.
Well,
double move.
The one he cut down the rail on Friday night was a double move, and the Cardinals linebacker just bites on it. And look, I mean, that guy was playing offensive tackle last year, Mitch. I mean,
Josh, that's not an easy catch.
No, that
is not an easy catch. Over the shoulder, running full speed on running a quarter pattern.
And he was hoisted off the field on after Wednesday's practice. Matt Castle hit him in the goal line, competitive live goal line session, and he finds Maneri in the end zone on a red zone route. It's incredible the transformation this guy has made. Number one in his body, but there's the double move I was talking about where the linebacker bit.
Yeah.
And he's
that's
making
legit.
linebackers miss. It's incredible to think that this guy had a belly and was wearing 68 last year and just kind of trucking down the field.
He didn't have much of a belly.
He did. If you look at the before and after photos, he was over 300. He's lost 45 pounds, Mitch.
But this St. Joe camp, Chandrone, Maneri, Toribio, St. Joe camp, the last 3 weeks to me have shot these guys up the board.
Absolutely, and those are probably 3 guys that were not on anyone's radar going in, and it would be surprising if camp ended today if those 3 guys weren't on this active roster, and I don't think many people saw that coming in. Pretty interesting times at St. Joe, and people, Mitch, when we came in, we were like, well, is there anything intriguing about this camp? No, there's no competition besides the quarterback battle. All the starters are set. Well, we just named off some things that can make the preseason interesting and can make training camp interesting, and guys that have a chance to contribute and make plays for the Chiefs in 2012. Training camp is over in St. Joe. It's not officially over for the Chiefs. Still 2 preseason games left, about 2 weeks left, and the cutdowns come in, and all of a sudden, when we turning around and Tony Gonzalez is going to be coming into Arrowhead Stadium, the Falcons will be arriving in town, and then the games aren't exhibition anymore, Mitch. They begin for real. Another awesome year in St. Joe. Can't thank Missouri Western enough.
Big props. Kurt McGuffin's the AD here. He's a Division I AD at a D2 school, but they treated this like a Division I 3 weeks. They were outstanding. Brett Easley, the whole staff. But again, to me, I will always remember the 2012 camp, seeing where this goes, as a time where it showed the best team chemistry that I've seen in my time in the National Football League.
Good way to close camp. Thanks for sticking with us through every day of practice here. Heartland Health, a great partner, making it possible to come with you live. Of course, Chiefs Live continues, picking back up with our Midwest Ford dealers. Now that we return back to Kansas City, we'll give you the date and times. I know we've been Tuesdays, Thursday. What's it going to be? We'll give you the date and times, and we'll have our normal weekly hour-long show as we break down the Chiefs each week of the 2012 regular season. We'll see you next week on KCChiefs.com when we get back to Arrowhead. Thanks, everybody.
Cow Pledge.
4th grade challenge.
Diabetes Expo.
As a key sponsor of Mustangs baseball and Chiefs training camp, Heartland is the #1 fan for a healthy St. Joseph.